All right, hello everybody. I'm Sam Kaufman. I'm a junior at the high school. I'm glad you're here. We're ready to hear your input. Mike asked me to help here, and I'm more than happy to because I'll do whatever's possible to make sure that we get as much citizen engagement in our government as possible.
Thank you for starting, Sam. I think what I'll do to start is I'll keep everybody muted and kind of go through the line because otherwise we'll end up having a bunch of people all talking at the same time. Thanks again for helping, Sam. My intent in doing this was just in that after seeing the giant glut of comments about a variety of things, I wanted to make sure that there was some method by which people could be heard and make some form of comment on how they feel about what the school district is going to be doing going forward. This is not like a school district sanctioned listening session or anything like that. It's not a Q&A really because I don't have all the answers, not anywhere near as much as administrators or people who are actually working in the district would have. We had a listening session earlier this month that Randy Gutenberg did, and he treated that as much more of a Q&A type session because frankly, Randy has a lot more answers than I do. This is just my initial foray into trying to give people a forum to speak their piece. If anyone wants to specifically comment before the school board meeting next Monday, I encourage you to do that. You can email the district administrator ahead of time for comments, and I think that's the best way to get that going. So to start things off, I wanted to give Sam the opportunity to maybe answer with a couple of questions that I posed online about how do we feel about going back to school in the fall, the issue of masks being mandatory, any specific things that that folks in the community want considered before the district or the school board makes any kind of major decision. So Sam, why don't you take it away and let me know how you feel about any of those things.
Well, what I would say is that, at least for me, I work at an employer in the industrial park, and there we are required to wear masks just because of the nature of what we do. I work at Oh, good. You fixed it. Okay, yeah. So we have to because, we make beer and I work in the production area. And is it the most comfortable thing in the world? No. But I'm more than happy to do it given the circumstances that we're in because I want to keep my job and I want to keep other people that I'm working with as safe as I possibly can. So I think in terms of schools, there's a lot that we have to work through. We have kids with different sensory needs, younger kids. It's a challenge to have them keep their mask on because, it's a distraction. So for me, if we work out those kinks, I would be in favor of it. In terms of the question about busing, I would certainly be for encouraging carpooling and those kinds of things as we can. Obviously, I have a car, so I'm fortunate, so I don't have to ride one, but I live in a neighborhood where we are far enough away from the school that the majority of kids do take buses. So I think it would be important for the carpooling aspect. Anything else you want me to talk about, Mike?
Anything else that strikes you as important or in general that you want to discuss? That'd be pretty much it.
I would say for the moment, that's good.
Okay. All right. So I will, as people come in, I'm going to try to just add people one by one. So I apologize if I put anybody on the spot. And some names for some people are different, so I'm just going to go randomly here. So Mrs. Fight, I think that's Alyssa. How about I'll go with you next, okay?
I'm going to pass. I'm mostly here to listen for now.
Fair
and I'm
enough.
also trying to set up a sprinkler. So I'll pass for now.
All right, I'm going to mute you. You mute yourself, and I can go with, let's go with Julie Weiner. You were the next to join.
Again, I mostly just wanted to listen. I was really intrigued by how the conversation kind of blew up. I'm in no official capacity anymore. From an outside observer standpoint, I certainly understand the desire to want to get things back to normal. And I guess I'm just presuming that the school board probably will operate in sync with whatever the current guidelines and recommendations are from both DPI and the state CDC. And I would hope that parents could get on board with supporting whatever those recommendations were. I understand the concern about the difficulty, especially with smaller kids, to get them to comply. But again, from a parent standpoint, I think kids pretty much tend to fall in line with whatever their parents tell them makes sense. So I appreciate those challenges. From my standpoint, at this point, it looks like masks definitely would be helpful. I also appreciate if there is any latitude for the district to reach out on like the busing issue. I think you're doing the right thing to put the idea out there that it may be in everyone's best interest to try to arrange neighborhood carpools and whatever. So I do think it's going to take a high degree of collaboration with no perfect answers. And the sooner that we can solicit and find out what people are willing to do to help, and to recognize that there's probably small things all of us can do to help, I think it's good that we encourage that.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And I thank you for kind of reminding me too, just to make the, I guess, the statement that is usually obvious to me, but might not be apparent to anyone else, is that I don't speak on behalf of the school district at all. That's not my position. The only person who's authorized to do that is Dave Betcher, who is the current school board president. So any statement I make at all is entirely personal. I'm happy to share information, but I don't represent the district in any way. I'm literally only representing my own take. And this is, frankly, in a self-interested point of view, this is largely for my benefit. And I'll share this listening session and recording with other board members if they so want to listen to it. But this is just for getting input. Please don't take anything I say here as any representation by the district. So thank you again, Julie. You reminded me of that by what you said at the start there, and thanks for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and add, let's see, Rebecca Rode. Sorry if I butchered your last name. And I'll just go ahead and, okay, go ahead, you're good.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I couldn't tell if you were going to do it. So I am, again, no authority either. I'm just a parent here. And I agree with what Julie was saying about how it would be great if the school system just follows the recommendations of Dane County and the CDC. On the other hand, I feel like there are many, many, many people who are currently not. You know, we're recommended to wear masks. We're recommended to do social distancing. And from what I've seen out in the community, a lot of people are choosing not to do that. So I think that maybe the school does need to get a little bit more forceful in saying that, yes, masks are required. All staff should wear masks. All kids should wear masks. And I agree that it's going to be really hard for little kids. I don't know how my kids would do with that, but if we could try to do some of the half and half options Randy was talking about in his last discussion or things. But I think that it's really important that the school board do what they think is right and not just sort of follow along with what Dane County might say, because I feel like a lot of people aren't listening to that anyway. Anyway, thanks. That's just my view.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. The one comment I think I can make on what you brought up there is that I do get the sense the district is trying to get a scientific background in terms of the decisions it makes, both by following guidance from the county and Dane County Public Health, the state. One of the things that we've learned, when I say we, I mean board members learned in about the last couple of days, is that administration's been sort of putting together a panel of experts from a variety of fields, but largely medical, in terms of what to do a lot of things, there's one specific individual, and I don't want to say the wrong name, so I'll pull up the email from Mr. Gutenberg here. It's Dr. Jeff Potoff, who will be presenting or answering questions at our board meeting next Monday. He's a parent and a doctor leading the COVID-19 work at UW, and he'll be giving us information next week too. So we are kind of assembling a panel to help the board and the district make wise decisions going forward, which I frankly haven't seen out of other school districts. So I was really pleased to see the districts are already doing that on their own. So thank you again. Let's see, go next. I will adding more participants as they come in. Let's go with just first name Cheryl. Go ahead.
I didn't have anything to add right now. I'm just here to listen for the time being.
Okay,
Thank you.
No worries. Let's go with Barb's new iPad. I don't know who that is, but go ahead, Barb.
This is Carrie. Barb's my mother-in-law, I think.
There you go.
I'll answer for her.
Carrie, I clicked you accidentally. Go ahead.
Oh, I undid myself. Sorry. I use Zoom a lot. So I think unless she wants to chime in and unmute herself, she can chime in. So no, I included her. I didn't know how big this was going to be. I guess, I'm a working mom and I hopped on here because, I wanted to listen first of all, but, there's things that I guess I didn't even realize that like next year, like if there's not a vaccine, our kids aren't going. I talked to a neighbor who's also a teacher and just realized that like it wasn't, obviously I've been listening to everything, but I think we have to get that out. Like this is gonna happen because I guess I'm surprised that there's not more on this chat. You know what I mean? And I don't know how many people are showing up to talk about this at the board meetings. I'm not always available to participate in the community here. So, I want to know if my kids are wearing PPE or PPE gear. Like, if they don't wear it at school, are they going to be reprimanded? How are they going to enforce that? Is that going to be uncomfortable? You know what I mean? To what degree do they have options or don't they? I think it is good having rules because I think people need direction. So there's those kinds of things, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what else to ask. Again, I kind of wanted to hear and maybe chime in with different questions. I didn't think I was going to have the whole floor. So, I mean, those are the things I guess I want to know. And I don't even know when are they making decisions. I heard Verona made decisions. I'm going like every other day. So when are these things happening here in Wanakee?
Sure. I think that's actually a good one that I can answer. And I'll dispute so there isn't too much crosstalk there. So to answer your question, the reason that I set this up today is because we do have a board meeting next Monday, in which you can find the agenda online and check everything out and see what precisely is being discussed. But it's pretty broad, and I somewhat fear this is going to turn into one of our 3 or 4 hour long board meetings. And we'll have public comments at the start of it, but the public comments are very open-ended because we're talking about generally COVID-19 issues, which is huge. So anybody could talk about anything. You brought up, and I'll kind of go in reverse order of what you brought up there, Carrie. You brought up Verona making decisions. Sun Prairie recently posted some of their decisions they were making. And what I think I can communicate is that districts are making their decisions with very little guidance or requirements from the county or from other agencies for exactly what we must do. But we're kind of going into this having to make a plan for everything. And this is kind of a good segue into showing specifically one thing that is in board book and is going to be presented at the board meeting next week. It was just released about in the last couple of hours, and I'll turn on screen sharing so others can see this. But there's more or less the idea of multiple possible instructional models. And the one that you referenced, Verona, was effectively 2 days on, 2 days off, and 1 day where all the schools are closed and they're quote unquote cleaning. We haven't announced anything at all like that. And it does appear that we're not in a position right now of making an actual decision on that. But that's what's likely going to be discussed on Monday. So I will share that screen with everyone. What you're looking at here is this possible instructional model scenario in which you have options of remote learning for all, alternating days. This is effectively what Verona has already talked about doing. Options of alternating weeks, half or partial days, rotating between grades, or in-person learning for all. At this point, we don't really know exactly what we will be doing, but these are options that are going to be discussed next Monday with a lot more information than I'm able to convey about it. So the only other thing I think I could probably maybe even ask you a question about on that is, you had said, I think you stated that if there isn't a vaccine, we're not going back. And I guess I wanted to know where you were coming from with that, because we have heard some individuals say they're not sending their children back to school until there is a vaccine, which raises concerns for anyone because we don't know if there will be a vaccine in 1 year or 10 years. So if you could talk more about that, Carrie, I'd like to know what you meant by that.
Oh, I heard that stage 4 is when we can have, stage 4 means that we can kind of go back to normal, and that there has to be a vaccine in order to go back to school.
Right.
That's
I think
what I heard. So it was more of like the CDC or, some other governing 4th stage. Somebody said was what I heard.
I think that's what Dane County is referring to as their phase 4. And I'll turn on screen sharing again because that's actually referenced in the next page. And it's specifically in that phase 4 is full-time on campus for all students with no restrictions. So no matter what the district ends up doing, it does appear that at some point we are going to have restrictions continuing until we get to that point. And at this point, it seems like public health is just telling us that the only way we get to that point is vaccines, which, again, as well as I do from when that'll be coming out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I will add just someone else from there. How about, let's go with John. Not able to unmute John. Let's go with, how about Holly Larson? Holly, can you unmute yourself? Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. I will try to, let's see. I'll try to add somebody else. How about Cheryl? Are you there?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, Cheryl, go ahead.
No, I already
I'm
said that
sorry.
I wanted to pass.
I am not the expert at Zoom, and the participant list changes order about every 5 seconds for some reason, so it throws me off entirely. I'll mute you again. Thank you. Joanna, you there?
Yes, hello.
All right, go ahead, Joanna.
Well, and thank you for throwing this together. I will admit I am newly engaged in this conversation. Mother of just a single child here in the Waunakee School District, and I really wanted to make sure I didn't miss an opportunity to see how the decisions are being made and how things play out, because it could potentially impact, our decision on what we do for school next year. I have a lot of questions as it relates to the logistics of requiring masks and lunchtime, and when they have their water breaks and when they blow their nose. And there's a lot of questions that I have about it. And I just want to make sure that we don't treat masks as a no harm sort of solution, that there's a recognition of the distraction, the potential problems that it may cause, because I feel like quite often it's perceived as a no harm solution. And I just want to make sure that both sides of the coin get fair play time and consideration in any decision, partly because I have a child with a sensory processing disorder, but also as someone myself who struggles with asthma. So I recognize that it's more than an unpleasant experience for some, in making sure that their voices get heard.
Great. Did you have any comments at all about specifically any issues of things like masking or busing? I mean, the reason I bring up those two issues is that those seem to be some of the more either contentious issues for people, or they are the ones that I know are going to have profound budgetary impacts on the district. The busing one is obviously the budgetary one, because if we have a rule or guidance suggesting that we cannot have any more than a certain number of kids on a bus, it could double a transportation budget that's already in 7 figures. So that was my concern there. And the main question that I had asked, which some people had emailed me back on, was would parents be interested in effectively opting out of busing, which some folks thought was kind of obvious. They don't use the bus anyway or choose not to, somewhat like what Sam referenced at the start. But by law, the district is required to provide busing to all students that live outside of a certain geographic distance from the school. And the school district actually has a different rule that actually includes even more students, if possible. And the concern is that would we be able to have enough parents who will effectively opt out and transport their own children so that we wouldn't need to add a bunch of buses to the fleet? So that was my only question on busing. Do you have any thoughts on either of those things, Joanna?
Well, I'll start with busing, because in my case, it's the simpler one, as I have a high schooler. So busing is not an option anyway. Had he been younger, I would comfortably still send him on a bus regardless of the number. And that's just kind of been our family's choice, in terms of we understand the value of washing hands and social distancing when possible, but recognize that with a 2-income family where we both go to work, sometimes your situation is what your situation is. But thankfully, he's old enough that he'll be providing his own transportation. So a bit like Sam. As for the masks, I feel pretty strongly against the use of them, and I recognize that that's not a very popular position, and I'm putting a target on my back by admitting as much. But I have been trying to find alternate data sources or other positions on the matter, both sides, to really understand if it is a do no harm, but also do no good. And if you have periods of the day like lunchtime where you can't eat with a mask, is wearing the mask the rest of the day really protecting your child? Or is it just a feel-good attempt because they're going to be surrounded by the same kids in the same recirculated air? There are studies, there's argument over whether or not it is considered PPE. And if it doesn't protect you from getting it, then it also can't protect you from spreading it, because if it can come in, it can go out. So I just want to make sure that a decision, that at least that opportunity is considered and on the table. And I would love to hear what, the doctor that you have coming to the meeting has to say about it and his experience with it, because a lot of the studies showing kind of the detrimental effects of masks have come from studying people at clinics that wear them all day, and headaches and other problems, health problems as a result of wearing masks. So I'm open. I'm not, I'm eager to hear further discussions, and I'm hoping to find a way to participate on Monday.
Great. Well, I hope you can make a public comment there too, Joanna, okay?
I will. Thank you.
All right. So one thing that I can add in here is the communication that I received from Mr. Gutenberg was that some of the bullet points we did get from Dr. Potoff were as follows. And I think that he can probably speak to these much more cogently and at greater length than I can, but I'll just read what was sent already. Is that we were seeking his guidance on a variety of medical issues and decisions. And these are a few bullet points. Face coverings are shown to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Per our discussion, he's consulting with his infectious disease colleagues to provide us feedback on face coverings with kids, particularly if they cannot keep them on or are constantly touching their face, etc. The issue of self-report wellness checks is what we're planning on in the district. It's a good way to go. Temperature checks have challenges in accuracy, speed, and maintaining social distancing. Issue there that Randy brought up when I talked to him the other day was you have a lot of kids coming in from the outdoors, and you're basically getting everyone's temperature showing up as 96 degrees, whether or not they had a fever or not. So doing a thermal scan for everybody is slow and cumbersome and might not be particularly useful. Dr. Potoff did note children seem to be impacted by the disease differently. The concern is them transmitting it to adults with whom they have contact. This is where we also talked about an advisory panel would be helpful to school administration. He is discussing this idea with his colleagues, and the whole variety of other things that they're thinking about as they put a plan in place for reopening school. So that's what I know about what Dr. Potoff will be talking about. I think he'll probably be presenting at greatest length on Monday, so definitely watch for that. All right. Let's go with Blackburn family. You there? If I can unmute you. I do not seem to be able to unmute some people. So I will say if there is anyone else on that wants to make a comment, please feel free to do so. Tim, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm here, Mike. Mainly here to listen. It's been interesting to hear some of the feedback that's been shared.
All right, thank you. Well, at least I got someone who I could unmute. Let's see, did I get Pearl yet? Sam, I'm gonna try to, go ahead, Pearl.
Hi. Hi, this is Eric. Can you guys hear me?
Sure, go
Yes,
ahead.
we can.
Oh yeah, I'm Pearl's husband. I've been listening mostly, and I understand that there's some concerns on the mask wearing, but I would strongly suggest that if we can, I would really hope that if the schools can proceed with the mask being required. We've been seeing several other countries that's with the requiring mask, and they are able to basically proceed their usual life as usual. They don't have any shutdowns and anything. And so I think mask wearing is probably kind of like essential before we can reasonably get a cure or vaccine. Especially like if you look back to the similar disease back in 2003, the SARS, there's still no vaccine yet, and there's no cure. Yeah, so this is a really similar type of disease that I really don't have no hope that the treatment or any vaccine would come out in the near future. Yeah. So yeah, but other than that, I would say, if possible, we can possibly have the mask being well recommended, and maybe combined with some other like things like if there's any type of situation like certain classes, they already have some people that get infected, maybe some rules to to kind of like stop the class or the school shutdown. But I think that would probably be deferred to the Department of Public Instruction, or maybe the health department set up that rules for us. But yeah, so that's mainly my comment.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Pearl. Sam, I made you a host, so you can also add other people. I wanted to make sure you could possibly add people in, because I'm having some issues with adding on people or unmuting them, okay?
Hey, Mike,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's pretty quiet.
So I'm Aisha. Wait, let me switch. Maybe that'll be easier. I have my.
Bluetooth, and then.
That sounds much better. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Aisha Dale. Couple things that I wanted to bring up was if there would be like an outdoor only option. There are a lot of countries that do like forest school formats, and I, only allow my kids to play with other kids outside and would feel comfortable with them learning outside.
Ashley, you said outdoor only option. It kind of clicked out. I think that's what you said, right?
About what's going to happen when adults that are doing the teaching are the ones getting sick, and how we've already had like a shortage of substitutes in the normal flu year, and how as a teacher, I teach in Middleton, I know that often the other teachers then have to teach those kids, and if we're having smaller groups of kids with one adult as one circumstance, then there's going to be groups are going to get bigger and bigger because there's already a shortage of substitutes.
Definitely. You kind of cut out in the middle there. I just wanted to make sure I heard you. So you were saying you thought or breaching the subject of like an outdoor only option, or kids who are outdoors basically all day. Was that correct?
Sorry.
Here and have you here at the same time. You can't hear me, right?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So did you hear my question about substitutes?
Not really the question. I knew that I could hear the discussion on substitutes, but more or less like what do we do when we are running out of teachers and we also have no substitutes too? Yeah, good question. I don't know. We had I know that we were having challenges with getting enough substitutes last year already, and that's pre-pandemic. Frankly, I think that might be a pay issue because we are competing with districts all over the county for who we have and who is regularly able to come in. And I do think that at least up until last year, we were not at the higher echelons of pay for substitutes either. So that might be a board decision for having.
Yeah, and I mean, I worry less about the kids getting the virus by bringing it home or giving it to the teachers, and then the teachers are not able to come to school. So for me, I just think that should be part of the conversation, I guess, is the safety of the adults that are doing the teaching and the bus driving and the cleaning and all the.
Definitely, I think that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
What wasn't clear to me is if they're talking about families with multiple children, how scheduling might work, or is it kind of going to be more like grade level specific and not as much like your family comes on this day kind of thing?
Right. So as of today, I can say we don't know. I don't know, at least. That's one of the discussions we're having next week. And part of this was I wanted to hear how are people dealing with the thought that your kids may be going back to school, but it's only for 2 days a week. So effectively, good luck with the other 3 days of the week. Your kids are going to be there for 2 out of 5. I'm fairly certain that if we had to do anything like that, it would be keeping families together if they possibly could. But I think we're trying to figure out what's the best solution that we have given many bad options. And having, I'm not in favor of having kids only in school for a couple days every week because it does present, at least personally, a challenge with how do you figure it out all the rest of the days of the week, because my family is a two-parent working household. My wife is lucky enough that she can usually work from home, but she can't work and teach either. I mean, she couldn't work and teach this spring either.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, we're definitely in that boat. My husband works every other week from home, so we're not quite sure what we would do in that circumstance. We're kind of waiting for that call to drop, I guess, and try to figure it out. I was hoping Wisconsin Youth Company would be trying to help, but I don't know. They've been closed this whole time anyways.
Right. Right. All right. Well, thank you, Asha. Okay.
Thank you.
Sam, want to pick somebody else to unmute?
Yeah, I'm just figuring it out. I haven't done this before. Yeah, I'm learning.
I've seen Holly sitting there, and I do not seem to have a good. There you go, Holly. You unmuted?
Okay, can you hear me though?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
This is the first time I've ever done this, so that's why you haven't heard from me yet. I'm just trying to figure out the best. I was looking for Bluetooth headphones and couldn't find them, so hopefully.
You sound great, and you have a good connection. So go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I have a lot. One of the reasons I joined was just kind of to listen, because I really have no fast opinions about anything at this point. As a parent with 3 daughters in 3 different schools in Wanakee. So we've got Arboretum, we've got one moving up to middle school and one moving up to high school. So just that in itself has always presented issues. So I wonder, as a parent from a household, with kids in different schools, how that might work. Also because different ages are going to handle these things differently. Does it make sense to create something across the board for all ages? I don't know. Or is there something that's going to have to be in place for elementary kids because they might not be able to handle masks or social distancing? These are the types of things that I wonder about. Because I also have an adult daughter in college, and they've already made the call for them, so I already know what's happening with her. And I think it's a little bit easier for older kids to kind of make that call, just because they've experienced more life and can adjust to kind of situations a little bit better than younger kids who, I think, Mike, you have a kindergartner. My youngest one is first grader going into second. So she hasn't worn a mask at all. I've kept her in the house. So I guess one of my biggest questions is, will the board have an idea of when they will be making a decision so parents can start to plan? I currently am a stay-at-home mom, but I have been trying to find a way to go back to work. So obviously I can't do that until, we get an idea of what's happening with the district.
Well, I think I actually have a really useful answer to that question, or at least in terms of what can you expect in terms of scheduling for planning. I think the goal, and this is just what I've heard from either Randy or other people within the administration, is that we're trying to get this done as soon as possible, but also doing it in the absence of having good guidance or rules to follow through the county, because they still haven't released their guidance. And I think they are literally releasing their guidance on June 22nd, next Monday, when we're having a meeting to discuss about how we're going to follow said guidance. So that's been a great challenge for our district's team to do that. So I will pull up what just got released. Well, hold on. Now that I made Sam the host, I can't screen share my own screen anymore.
So it wasn't a coincidence that the 22nd was the day you guys decided to meet? Okay.
No, we just decided at the last meeting to have a second board meeting.
I just changed it so you can share.
Thanks, Sam. So we just decided at the last board meeting to have more meetings because everyone loves having a 3-hour board meeting, and why not have 2 every month? So what we're going to do is kind of break it out so that the first meeting every month is shortened and not dealing with so many COVID issues, and is dealing with all the other issues that we would normally be dealing with. And the second meeting every month is likely mostly over pandemic planning. So we'll have 2 regular board meetings every month for the rest of the summer, at least until the end of August, and I think until the end of September. So what I'll screen share with you is a fall planning timeline that was included in board book for our meeting next Monday. And the large thing here is initial planning. And I think I could probably put this PDF up online so people can read it at their leisure more, but I'll just slowly walk you through it. Initial planning is basically what's been going on already through the administration. The 22nd is this issue here, school board presentation and feedback. We're going to have a draft outline, and that's also contained in this document of categories of the work in the Wanakee reopening framework, which is also going to be released for the public to see too. We're talking about what we're going to be doing in terms of Camp Kindergarten and the extended school year, and considering the degree that we're going to be opening for any other additional programs too. We had a survey that I can probably reference in here too with parents that are just doing Camp Kindergarten this year. To just give you a brief idea of what that was, it was a survey of all parents who were sending their kids to school through Camp Kindergarten, which is the introductory, basically brief period of time to have kids in the building to get used to being in the building. That had about 170 respondents out of the 260 or so kids. About 135 of them said they are still planning on sending their kids. 35 of them said they are not. And about half of them were saying they wouldn't send their kids at all, no matter what. And about 10 to 15 of them said they didn't want to send their kids because they would have to wear masks for it. So about 15 out of 170 said they had concerns with basically the district's plan at this point. And I think we got some good information from them on that survey too. So I think that survey that went out to Camp Kindergarten is also going to be a survey that goes out to the larger district as a whole to get greater information too. But the initial one we did was more just to get info on those first kids that are going to be back in the building, and that's next month. So beyond that, there will be work group planning through the middle of July. There will be another school board update in July, work groups continuing throughout the summer, and then a plan for how various things are going to be happening throughout August into the middle of September. And I mean, you'll note here at the end, basically we're going to have this as a school board issue from now until the end of the pandemic, which who knows when that is. Okay.
Right.
So the idea is there is a plan, and I hope we can share this so that the public can see that we do have an idea for when exactly decisions will be made.
Okay. Will the information released on the 22nd from the county, how will that, I guess my question is, are we actually going to have a choice, or is the county going to be basically telling us what's happening, or do we not even really know at this point? Like, I see that Verona kind of has a pre-plan, but until we hear what the county is saying, can that effectively destroy any pre-planning, or is each district responsible for making those decisions? I understand there are guidelines,
right?
But yeah, sorry, I have a visitor here, so I'll listen.
No, there is a non-zero chance that I will have a 7-year-old stick his head up from next to me at any given time here too.
Yeah,
I understand. Part of what was also included in this packet that's getting released is the actual framework that Public Health has released for their most recent order. And I think the trouble that we have with that, and you referenced this, is that a lot of what we're getting is guidance. It's not actually a mandate for anything. And as of yet, we don't really have a specific mandate on anything. But for now that we're in phase 2, schools actually can reopen. And they do have some relatively limited requirements that are pretty clear, but they're not specific in terms of you must wear a mask or you must do X, Y, or Z. So we are kind of fumbling about at this point trying to make a plan that works best for what we have to do. But I think, as you referenced, it could get blown up by a variety of things. So the challenge I think administration has is to make many plans and try to plan for the best with multiple scenarios also happening. Because if there is a large scale outbreak, we could always have DPI come from the outside and say, you're closing your school. That's what happened this year with closing down for the rest of the year until the end of June. So we're currently still under an order that does not allow schools to be open, even now. And that ends in about 11 days. So we're basically trying to make the best decisions that we can make in fumbling about in the dark to a certain extent. But that's kind of why, and I don't know if you were on when I had it previously up on the screen, why there are those series of multiple different options for what to do if different things do happen, right?
Okay, I only saw about 1 minute of that because I think I had just logged in. Okay, kiddo.
I can try to make sure that this is all posted too so people can see it. I mean, it's been released to board members. I'm fairly certain that it's released to the public too. And it should all be available on the district's website right away because this will all be discussed in greater detail by administration next Monday, okay?
Right.
All right.
Okay. How much is information sharing occurring? I believe I asked you this maybe a little yesterday on the Facebook page. For example, the survey I mentioned that got sent out to the parents, we had about maybe 3 of them asking, hey, how things are going? How is the tech issues? How are things working? And I shared specific detailed information on there regarding what wasn't working for my kids. Is that something that also is shared with you guys? And like, how is the decision process made? Like, who's involved? How much are you involved? How much is administration involved? You know, my biggest thing as a parent is who am I supposed to be giving my feedback to? That would be the most effective, with the least amount of, the least time consuming.
Sure. No, that's a good question, and I appreciate the kindness to other people's time that is referenced kind of in your question of like, how can I communicate to the people that it matters to?
Right. I just don't want to, I understand if I need to communicate with more people, I will, but the most effective way of doing that is great for me because I will either get interrupted or forget to follow up, or, maybe I would send it to the wrong person and then wonder, well, why didn't they know about this? I gave this feedback.
Sure. Well, I think the most effective way to deal with any individual issue for a specific child, the first line is their teacher. I think that's the first person you should contact if there's any issue there. And if that's not sufficient, there are people after that who you can talk to. Probably the least efficient person to talk to would be me, because anything at the board level is kind of delegated to anyone else because we don't micromanage what anything is doing in any given building. So if there's an internal classroom issue, I think you should talk to a teacher. If that's not resolving it, there are school social workers, there's the principal in any individual building to go to next. If there is any questions regarding how services are being applied, there's multiple people you can talk to. Tim Schell, who is, I think, still on this call, and I think he unmuted himself because he might be able to help. Kurt Ely, who's in charge of student services for the district, and obviously the superintendent too. So Tim, do you actually have any information on that that's more useful than what I can have?
Yeah.
I don't know that it's more useful than what you have, Mike. And again, I'm here really to listen this afternoon, but I can speak briefly to how we use our survey information that you have all provided to us. So when you complete those surveys, Mike and the other board members, they get a pretty high-level summary, usually longitudinal reports on a few pieces of information we pull from those surveys. And that's mainly because there's so many items on the board's agenda. But the surveys in their entirety, including the comments, are reviewed by all of the administrators in the central office. And we unpack that by school, and the principals also get all of the survey responses for their schools. For some, but not all of the family surveys, particularly early in the process, we also provided breakdowns of that information to the grade level teams at the elementary schools and the villages at the intermediate school. We did some light reviewing of the comments. In some cases, people had some very specific comments that we needed to slightly redact. When we got close to the end of the process, we didn't see as much immediate value add from a course correction to get all of that to the teachers, but the principals still got all of those comments. I don't know if that helps, Holly, with understanding kind of the flow of that information.
Yes, that is very helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the long notes I provided, and I think it was the third one, because I had the most information at that point. We had basically been through the entirety of the at-home learning. And I was very opinionated at that point because I was able to see, how each one of my kids was able to or not able to adjust to, the learning at home. So,
Thank you for taking the time to write those comments. I actually remember those.
uh-oh, that's good or bad. I don't know.
All information is good.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tim, because I was really hoping you were still on the call to be able to answer that, because I was not going to have a useful answer for it. Thank you. All right, let's see. How about Carrie? I know you have your hand raised, so I'll go back to you. And I guess if anyone's still on the call who I haven't gotten to yet, who still wanted to make a comment or a question or anything like that, please use the hand raising option, because that's really useful to be able to get to somebody in case I haven't gotten to you already and you're still on there. So Carrie, go ahead.
I was just curious. I'm not obviously a healthcare expert, but why wouldn't we do something like 14 days on, 14 days off, or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off?
You're saying
As an option.
why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah, because instead of just 2 days a week, I don't know, I was thinking outside the box.
No,
I'm sure there's health concerns, but it's like if we're going to get exposed, like there's a certain amount if we're naturally going to go through this. I'm just curious if that would be an option.
Well, I think that's partly referenced in one of the possible instructional models that was in that one, because there is an option for alternating weeks. I mean, I'm sure you could do alternating 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off too. I think that the challenge the district would try to be aware of for that is how do parents make childcare arrangements for when they have those weeks where the kids are home and not at school. And that's different for every family, so there's really probably nothing we can do that will fit for everyone. We're aware of it.
I'm going to say any of the options are going to be hard to accommodate from a working parent standpoint.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I had a couple maybe suggestions, once you guys decide everything, and we get more information about the face masks and for schools or for kids, is there better ways to use those? How do you put them out? How does it fit right? What is comfortable? What's the best one that allows you to breathe? Somebody just mentioned you should put essential oil in there. I'm just saying there might be some great, a lot of great health information to get in, maybe some videos to educate all of us. Because we've just avoided, not really putting them on our kids. So if that's going to be something that's going to be recommended, I'm just saying that they might want to support with some more information for us to get more comfortable in what does work for other kids, instead of us all trying it and getting frustrated. And if somebody has, a couple great suggestions, that would be great. And even parent forums before going back to school, just any suggestions that we learned, I guess, in this last spring that maybe we can share. Because it was all new for us, obviously, but I'm sure we've learned a few things that we could share with everybody. So
Definitely.
Some forums like that might be nice, depending on what they decide. So just some suggestions.
No, those are great ideas. Thank you. I mean, one of the things that I referenced in the last board meeting, specifically with what my family was doing, is that we are, and part of the reason why I was hoping that the district can have an idea for what they're going to require as soon as possible is so kids can get accustomed to it. My kids personally haven't worn masks all that much because, like Holly, we've got them at home for the most part. But when they've gone out, they've had to wear them. I have a son with a nut allergy who has requirements to go to the doctor on a regular basis, or at least had to this summer. So he had to get used to it. So he's much more accustomed to it than our older son, who just hasn't had to go out and do it at all. So my hope is that we can communicate as soon as we possibly can what will actually be required, so parents can make decisions from there to, one, prep their kids for what they're going to have to do, or two, make decisions for what they exactly want to do going forward, just so we give as much possible notice to people so they can make plans. And that's a big ask, obviously, for the district, but we're going to be starting that obviously next week. I see someone physically raising their hand. Joanne, I think there are a couple more people who are on the call that I haven't asked to yet, but I will get back to you, okay? Let's see. Sam, there's a couple people on here who have not had a chance to talk to yet. You want to get any of those? I made you the host again, by the way.
Okay. Katie Dotzler, do you want to say anything?
I'm just listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wannabes, any comments? All right, Joanna, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, listening, and I kind of have forgotten about what it's like to have a younger child, but for those families that have kids that'll need care, because they still need to go to work, either after school or on days that there isn't school, is the school district going to be coordinating with any of those programs to be consistent? I mean, so if they wear masks all day at school and then they go to daycare and they're maskless, is it worth the battle of having teachers all day like, Johnny, you're not wearing your mask right? And I was just curious, because I think I had heard that daycares aren't currently requiring masks of the little ones.
I don't know the answer to that as a question, Joanna, but I think that's a really good question to note whether or not we are actively coordinating with aftercare providers. Like Wisconsin Youth Company is one that Holly referenced earlier. They work with the schools. Obviously, I think they're the aftercare provider in all the elementary schools.
So we used.
Right. So I think that is an important conversation that we have to make sure that we're having with them too, because we don't want it to become, well, now that you've been forced to do something you didn't like all day, now you run free and we've wasted all that effort. So that's a really good point. Thank you. Anybody else on there, Sam?
No, I don't see anyone new. It's just more people leaving than coming in.
All right. There's a John. John, go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can
hear you.
Okay, thank you. What's going to happen, because it's bound to happen, what's going to happen when somebody tests positive? Whether it's staff, adults, students, teachers?
Okay, that's a good question. I think that part of what we're going to be presenting next Monday will be some options for that, because when you are dealing with issues of medical issues, we're obviously dealing with a variety of complicated circumstances. Individuals have the right to privacy to a certain extent, but from there, we have the requirement of not exposing people to infectious diseases either. So I won't pull all of it up in terms of what we had sent to us and is available publicly through Board Book on the district's website, but there are, I think, some things that HR through the district will be working on specifically in terms of staff for how they maintain their health, and this was referenced earlier in terms of how we're going to deal with substitutes. It's a really difficult question that I don't have an answer for you on that. In terms of exactly what we're going to do when someone does get sick. I can tell you that it was publicized, so this is not any secret, that there was actually a bus driver for the district who did test positive and would have had the virus while he was transporting kids, and it actually was my children's bus driver too. Now, we don't know of anyone actually getting sick from having ridden on the bus with this specific individual, but that was a challenge because the district had to talk to legal counsel, find out whether or not we could communicate with potentially affected people, what was going on there. So we didn't really have to do anything in terms of quarantining anyone or asking them to not be around anyone, because at the same time we had spring break, and then by the time spring break ended, DBI had effectively closed schools. So we didn't have to address that issue in the spring, but it's a good question to bring up now as to how are we going to deal with it in the fall. So some of the things that I know the district is considering is exactly how to try to minimize contact between various grades, between various classrooms, if you're talking different levels below high school, to try to limit the amount of contact kids are having with one another. So if you have an outbreak effectively in a small group, you don't have to dramatically close the entire school, because if one student had absolutely no contact with anyone else at all, then it's exceptionally unlikely that they would have been exposed to anything. So I think that also some of the other stuff we were discussing is in terms of what do you do with the students who effectively have been exposed to. If there are students who've been exposed but they're not testing positive, are they still going to be in an effective quarantine? And I don't know an answer to that question at this point, but that is something that the district is considering and will be discussed at greater length, I think, next Monday. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right. Is there anyone else who wanted to make a comment or ask any kind of question that I could answer? I think that's pretty much everybody we had on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, unless anybody chimes in while I wrap it up here, I guess I just want to say I appreciate everyone showing up, asking questions. Thank you, Sam, for helping kind of control the tech aspect of this here, because I wasn't able to add some people there who wanted to make comments or ask questions. I encourage everyone to review the information the district's putting out, and we'll be making public if they haven't already for what's on the agenda for next Monday. Thanks again to Tim for coming in and answering that question regarding the survey issues. And I very much encourage everyone to stay informed and to contact anyone on the board with any comments you have, because that's how we get information. Part of the reason I wanted to do this was because before yesterday, I hadn't had anyone contact me about anything, and I always feel very uncomfortable with even being 1/7 of the decision-making body without some more input from the public. So thank you again, everyone who came and made comments. And I'm not going to read all the comments that were emailed to me because there actually were quite great number of them, but those will be forwarded on to other board members so they can also see that too. All right. So with that, I'll log everybody off, and I thank you all for participating. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you for coming.